First of all, in this video you won't find anything that fuels the hatred between Hoyoverse and Wuthering Waves players. I'm going to do the exact opposite actually. As a gamer and as a content creator, I felt the need or desire to talk about what's happening between these two communities of players, mainly because I'm tired of it, to be completely honest. So we're gonna talk about these games, about their qualities and flaws to figure out if this war between the players even makes sense. But first, this is not a theory video, but everything I'll say today is purely my own personal opinion. I will talk about my experience playing these games, what I think they excel at, and what I think they could improve on, so do keep this in mind as you watch this video. Well then, enjoy my poor excuse of a gameplay in the background, grab your favorite character and let's get this video started. As some of you know, I started playing Wuthering Waves a year ago in November when one of my viewers told me that Rinascita was about to be released, and since I'm Italian, I could have made a video about the pronunciation of the Italian words used in the new region. I made that video considering they butchered 95% of those Italian words, starting with Rinascita itself. It's clear that the goal was to make it sound Italian by using Italian words regardless of their actual pronunciation, and most players around the world didn't even notice those mistakes. They even praised how Italian Zani sounded even though she's Greek. In the end, my ears bled copiously, and I prayed that this guy stopped introducing himself just not to hear him say,
"I am Cristoforo."
But okay, I guess? Now, playing version 1 in less than 2 months made the evolution of the game very noticeable to me, so let's talk about it for a second. And I refer to Rover with male pronouns because that's the one I picked. Version 1 was challenging. It was clear that the game had just been released and there were quite a few things that felt off. The most obvious one was how the female characters had basically already fallen in love with Rover before they had even met him for the first time. We could explain this, like if it's a higher entity or even a god of Solaris, the characters might think they're in love, but in reality they're unconsciously worshipping him for what he is. Not sure why this doesn't happen with male characters though. What I cannot understand is Jiyan suddenly deciding not to do his job as a general during the fight against the Threnodian, placing the lives of his soldiers in the hands of a random guy who doesn't even remember who he actually is, that suddenly popped up out of nowhere. I mean, what if Rover was secretly a member of the Fraxidus? Something else that troubled me was the voice acting, especially Yang Yang, since I actually googled her to see if she was voiced by AI.
Now they're each responsible for a part of Huanglong. Naturally, there are sentinels in other regions too, but fewer compared to Huanglong.
But this particular issue, along with many others, got resolved when I got to the Black Shores. The game suddenly felt completely different, the music became amazing, the voice acting drastically improved, Yang Yang's voice actress finally sounded like she was allowed to enjoy her job, she sounded human and real for the first time, only for that interaction to be the last one we had with her. I later found out that this happened because the voice acting director changed, and characters like Camellia would have never been possible if that didn't happen, although I really can't stand her. She's like Inger times 500.
Now use your strong hand to stir it with a persistent rhythm. Keep going until the juices start to come out.
And like Inger, she's the definition of uncomfortable interaction.
More! I can't help wanting more! Come on! Dance like there's nothing left! Entertain me!
Nope, I can't. I really can't. Something that didn't change instead was the half-an-hour long expression of gratitude at the end of every single quest, in which a character, mainly the female ones, kept thanking Rover for how he saved them and how he changed their lives for basically breathing the same air. Like, chill, we just took a walk, too much pressure. The major problem though was that these scenes were characterized by a very intense close-up of their faces, looking straight into the camera, which felt like they weren't thanking or expressing their love for Rover, they were doing it to the players directly. That to me was uncomfortable, more than Camellia actually, because I didn't like being forced into the intense eye contact. I'm playing the story through Rover, but I'm not Rover, so bypassing him to get to me directly is a breach of immersion, at least in my opinion. Then Rinasira was finally released and it was a whole different game. The music got even more amazing and the characters felt extremely real and credible. No more close-ups, no more staring into the player's eyes and souls, we can now decide whether a character has fallen in love with Rover or if they just became close friends, like even Carlotta saying,
"Fall for me, will you?"
didn't sound nor feel like she was talking about love, it was clearly a joke because they were about to jump through a window. I also loved Chacona's companion story, which felt like a movie, it was intriguing and very well done, I was speechless. When Brant, my favorite character, was released, I found my personal goal in this game because I am getting his entire resonance chain, but then Cantarella happened. Now I think she has one of the best face designs in the whole game, but her body, her clothes, well, clothes is an overstatement, are too much. To me, this feels like the developers didn't trust that Cantarella was gonna be interesting enough, so they made her extremely provocative to attract the players, and it was unnecessary. Even if she were a floating empty cape, her personality alone is so powerful that it would have been more than enough to still make her one of the best characters in the entire game. The fact that we couldn't tell if she was telling the truth, or if she was tricking Rover, or trying to poison him and the players across the screen was so well done. Instead, I kept wondering what kind of superglue she used to keep her clothes on, considering how everything bounces all over the place by just breathing. I mean, can you even imagine how painful it must be for that kind of weight to be pulling her left and right, especially with those mid-air acrobatics while she fights? On the other hand, take the Shorekeeper. Her personality, story, and elegance are just as amazing as Cantarella's, but she doesn't have extremely provocative shapes, and yet she's still one of the most beloved characters in the game, because everything revolves around who she is and not what she looks like. Since we're talking about extreme designs, I never understood why the straps on Lupa's legs are supposed to be attractive. They're quite literally tourniquets considering how tight they are. I suppose being wounded wouldn't even be a problem since there's definitely not blood flow in those areas. Now on a serious note, I really enjoy Wuthering Waves, I play it every day, I always look forward to the new Fantasies of the Thousand Gateways every Monday, I love Whimpering Wastes, it's my favorite mode, I hate the Tower of Adversity, but that's a skill diff and my lack of eyes and Havoc DPSs makes it impossible for me, but I think there are still a few problems that will eventually be resolved. For example, the story in Rinasira was really nice, but every time a new update was released, I felt lost, because although each story was amazing on their own, they didn't feel like they were part of the same main story. The only thing they had in common was just Leviathan freaking coming back to life 50 times in a row, and they finally made sense as a whole only when Rinasira ended in version 2.7. I personally think that the main focus of a game should always be the story and the lore first, and then the characters without which the story obviously can't move forward. As I've always said, Wuthering Waves has great potentials, the concept of a world based on frequencies is incredible and unique, and they've shown their ability to radically improve the game, so I just hope they keep on doing that. I hope they'll start trusting their own game more, and I hope they'll understand that a great game isn't about making excessively attractive characters to convince players to spend money on them, but it's all about a great story and interesting characters that feel real despite the fact that they're not. At least I think that the best quality a fantasy game can have is realism. When it comes to Hoyoverse Games, I play Genshin Impact and Star Rail every day. I play Zenless Zone Zero's main quest, but I often forget to keep playing it after that. And I loved Honkai Impact Part 1, but Part 2 cannot compete at all. Now all these games, just like Wuthering Waves and literally every single game in existence, have their unique qualities but also equally unique flaws. Genshin Impact has butchered Italian on multiple occasions. I'll always say Spina di Rosula, and I'll always say Tartaglia, although I usually call him Child to avoid that name. They've also constantly associated Italy with mafia, like the Harbingers, or the copious references to The Godfather in Fontaine, while the literature, art, and culture that actually makes Italy what it is were only used for the names of the NPCs on Petri Shore, people you probably don't even remember about. They've also butchered German, yes, Fischl and Oz, I'm looking at you angrily. They butchered French, because why is she chevreuse and not chevreuse? It would have sounded so much better. And they butchered Latin a lot. It is mare givari, because mare means sea, as in sea of ashes, while mare means female horse, which makes no sense in this context. We haven't even seen a single horse in that. And let's ignore the pronunciation of Latin in the songs from Not Cry. It sounds like the singers were just given the lyrics and had to improvise on the spot. The wishing system is frustrating, since if you're like me and you haven't won a single 50-50 since 5.1, you would need 180 pulls to get a character and 180 more if you want the weapon, while the game itself and the endgame modes don't give even remotely enough to pull for a single character, so you need to skip most of them and only get those you really want. Well, unless you're a whale, in that case you have no problem whatsoever, you're even constantly rewarded for how much you spend. In my case, since I'm not a whale, I'm probably gonna have to skip Durin, just like I skipped Nefer, because I really want Colombina and above all, Varka. On the other hand, Star Rail has indeed removed 4-star characters in Amphorius, and we don't even know if there will be new ones in the future, but the game has a lot of endgame modes that give an absurd amount of stellar jades. I've never spent a cent on the game, but I do have Aglaya, Hyacinth, Castris, Midamos and his Lycon, E2 Finon and his Lycon, Evernight and her Lycon, Danhang Permancer Teres Lycon, and Sereni and her Lycon. Lastly, about Genshin Impact, I really don't like how lunar reactions are locked behind the 5-star characters, so you either pull for them or you won't be able to experience Not Cry to the fullest. And even with the Traveler most likely acquiring lunar reactions in probably Luna 4, the endgame modes are tailored around lunar reactions, so it's not fair to our F2P players. While in Natlan, for example, we immediately got Kachina and then obtained other 4-star characters through the events, so we could use Phlogiston and Night Soul bursts. Now, I read everything we can find in Genshin Impact because I make theory videos, and I'm extremely interested in Star Rail's lore, but when it comes to Zenless Zone Zero, I only play the main quests because it's a very bouncy game. It's all about jiggle animations on every single inch of the character's bodies, even Manatos Pack's jiggle, so it's clear what the main focus of the game is. That being said, the main story is very compelling and interesting. I'm still waiting for Sarah to reach her goal because I really want to meet the creator, for example, and we always learn something new about the world with every new update, so you don't really need to go above and beyond to understand what the story is about. Some pieces of information are kinda badly explained, like the timeline isn't always extremely clear, but I like how some uncertain things are able to give us a lot to think about, like it's clear that the old civilization from long ago is basically our civilization, which may mean we're on the Earth, and it's probably why it's called Eridu, like Earth but with a Japanese twist in the pronunciation. I mean, the first trailer that showed the appearance of the very first Hollows was set on our Earth, right? Lastly, Honkai Impact was amazing in part 1, I will forever love the Elysian Realm and Elysia's story, I refilled the world's reserves of water with my tears when that story ended, and the same happened with the ending of Amphorius, but part 2? It started good, but then Coralie, the character I liked, died and Hylia became the center of attention, and I can't stand Hylia. Anyway, ShadowXImpact has characteristically miles-long dialogues with words I've never even heard before in English, and chances are that if I check their Italian translation, they would still be words I've never heard before, so it's hard to follow. Anyway, Hoyoverse also gives too much importance to how attractive or provocative a character looks like in order to convince players to get those characters. I mean, even if we think that the mythological llaumas are supposed to be abundant, Lauma still looks too excessive, and her shapes and her clothes were chosen for this obvious reason. This is also true for the other games, Zenless Zone Zero more than the others, and let's not forget how cringe the animations and personality of the upcoming Dahlia in Star Rail are. To conclude the video, the Hoyoverse Games and Wuthering Waves are both similar and completely different at the same time, because every single video game in existence has its qualities and its flaws, which leads to the main question of this entire video. Does this war between communities even make sense? The short answer is no, obviously. Competition is very important because it pushes people to make better things, but we're talking about a healthy kind of competition that involves the companies, while people insulting each other online, trash-talking games they don't like, thinking that this would make a difference for the game they do like is completely pointless. The only way players can contribute to the development of a game is through feedback to the developers directly. Take No Man's Sky, a game I played for 780 hours. It started awfully, but the devs listened to the players' feedback and improved it so much it's now one of the best games ever. Now, to be fair, Hoyoverse and Kuro are actively using this drama. It's no coincidence that Mawika and Agosta look almost the same and have the same sun concept, as well as Kirk's riffs don't coincidentally look like tacit marks for no reason. We could even add Namipon and Pompon being conductors, although Pompon is on an actual train at the very least. Of course, these companies need to make money to pay the artists, developers, writers, and anyone who works on these amazing games. They deserve to be paid considering what they managed to create. But let's also be honest with ourselves, if we manage to make a successful game, we would definitely try to make as much money as we can. Because although you can't buy happiness, money still helps us live comfortably. I mean, while creating my first Wonderland in Miliastra, I did look up a C# course a few weeks ago when I thought about making my own game. But it's too late for me, I'm too old to dream at this point. Reality has already slapped me in the face pretty hard a month ago, and I'm still recovering from the mental breakdown I had because of it, so take this piece of advice, which is way more important than the topic of this entire video. If you're young and you want to do something, do it now. Acquire the skills to make it a reality and just do it, because it's better to try and maybe fail than to live the rest of your life with regrets like I do. Anyway, the Hoyoverse Games and Wuthering Waves have different settings, animations, gameplay, stories, so it is impossible to both compare them and to try to find out which is the better one. Games, like most things in life, are a personal choice, they reflect our preferences. For example, my brother loves horror games like Fear but doesn't like Genshin Impact, while I love Genshin Impact but I would never play a horror game. Which game is better then, Fear or Genshin Impact? Both and none of them, because it depends on what each player likes. As a consequence, telling people to stop playing the game they like because you think it sucks not only is pointless and immature, it also creates a whole drama that pushes people away from the game you are trying to promote. For example, I didn't play Wuthering Waves since release because I didn't want to be involved in this endless drama, and in the end, I didn't get to enjoy this game for as long as I could have. Games are supposed to be fun, they're our way to distract ourselves from our problems, to take a break from reality when it gets too unbearable, so this is my piece of advice to all of you watching. Just play the game that you like and don't play those you don't like. If you like more than one game, then play them all, you don't have to choose. This is your life, you get to decide what you want to play, so do it for yourself and enjoy the time you'll spend exploring the world that makes your heart beat with joy. And that's it, I hope you liked the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. This is actually a Genshin Impact Theory channel, so feel free to check out my other videos, and if you're interested, consider subscribing. This was a very different kind of video. I stepped out of my comfort zone because talking about the lore of a game is way easier, but if you're still watching, I hope it was worth it. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.